2022 Ordinary Council meeting for the Muswellbrook Shire Council, and welcome to the public. Thank you very much. And I now pass on to Councillor Douglas for the acknowledgement of the country.
Yama, I would like to acknowledge the Wanneroo people, the traditional custodians of this land we meet on tonight. I pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the memories, the traditions and the culture of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people across the nation. We have been elected by our community to deliver as our elders of our land have done in the past. I would also like to recognise the strong ongoing connection of First Nations people of the lands and waters where we do our work and their commitment to care the country.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. The Civic Prayer, Councillor Leckey.
Almighty God, from whom comes every good and perfect gift, we thank you for the blessings you bestow upon us in this Shire. Grant to those who hold office in this council the spirit of justice and truth, of wisdom and charity, that mindful of our responsibility and of the needs of those we serve, we may promote the true welfare of your people, exercise wisely and faithfully the authority committed to us, and advance the common good through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Please be seated. Next item on the agenda is apologies and applications for leave of absence or attendance by audio visual link by councillors. We have the apologies for the inability to attend the meeting submitted by Councillor Bowditch, Councillor McNeil and Councillor Woodruff be accepted and the leave of absence granted. Someone wish to move that motion? Councillor Barry, Councillor Drayton. All those in favour, please raise a hand. Now to confirmation of the minutes of the previous council meeting.
So moved.
By Councillor Scholes, seconded by Councillor Douglas. Disclosures of any pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests. Sorry, all those in favour of that last item, please raise your hand. Okay, declare that carried. Disclosures of any pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests.
Yes, in 9.1.2. Conflict of interest.
1.1.2. Conflict of interest in employee.
Yes, an employer.
Any other conflicts of interest?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I've got same item. I've got a very minor non-pecuniary interest at schools. That's very close to the point.
Thank you, Councillor Scholes. I was going to ask you to be Councillor Dunn, so.
Thank you. Could be waiting a while.
Public participation. Mayor, we do not have any public participation. We have Susan Parrott, Christine Hope, Alicia Priestley, Jen Kempstra, Nitin Gupta, Shweta Kumar, and David Casson, Nathan Battershall, and Kale Langdon. Nathan Battershall. They were all in relation to 9.1.1 boarding house development, and Kale Langdon item 9.1.2. Just questions if there were any. So, in line with our code of meeting practice, each speaker has 2 minutes, should they wish to, and we'll start with Susan. Ms. Parrott, come up to this lectern.
Good evening. My name is Susan Parrott and I live at 39 Maple Street. I am the direct neighbour to the northwest of this proposed development. This development is allowed to proceed in its present form. We believe that our family's privacy will be adversely affected furthermore. We will be subjected to an avalanche of noise and the glare from a 2-storey monstrosity that spans the length of our property will be blinding. As per the development application, the building will be of 2 stories in nature and is set to run the length of the property. Therefore, to arrow the entire length of our property, this will give tenants extraordinary views from the second level of our previously private backyard from the ground level rooms. The fence, although stated that it will be a minimum of 1,800 high, it is assumed that the fence will be from ground level, not ground floor level, which means that the true fence height will be more like 1,300 high, which is on the average person approximately chest height. Clearly giving the tenants an uninterrupted view the entire length of our property. This will result in our family and our property being left exposed and vulnerable to strangers' peering eyes every day of our lives. In the planning and development scope, Mr. Casson put together the said Barber House on page 22, anticipated impact of noise levels to the site and locality. Nowhere has he taken into consideration the noise coming from the numerous air conditioners that will be needed to ensure minimum comfort levels in our demographic climate, given that there are 23 individual rooms and furthermore 2 large communal rooms that will require heating in weather and cooling in summer. Can you imagine the noise from these 25 air conditioners pumping all hours of the day and night along the boundary plans? Now, council has stated that in their town planning response that they have put forward a recommendation condition of consent for a plant to be installed in a manner that controls noise emission. But we'd like to know what that is because we have no idea. It states on page 8 of the planning management. Can I have a time, please?
Yep.
I've almost finished.
Okay, no problem.
It states on page 8 of the plan management, August 2021, each room will be provided with appropriate means of heating and cooling rooms. This is why I believe they will install air conditioners. We believe that this will be a major impact on our family. Also, Mr. Carson's proposal on page 10, under the heading of building design, it states that development facade presents a modern building structure because it does not dominate the locality. However, in the illustration, the building is demonstrated white, what appears to be a very pale grey, which we believe dramatically reflects the afternoon sun, thus causing our family to be constantly squinting. We purchased our family home in March 2006. Whilst we did expect some changes within the area in years that followed and had to accept quite a few, we believe that this is just far too much. And at the last council meeting, Mr. Wilson mentioned that previous building DA for the 2-storey motel on the same site, which was applied for in May of 2011. However, Mr. Wilson did not own the property then. He purchased it from the previous owner in 2019, and to the best of our knowledge, he has never resided in that area of Muswellbrook Council. Yet he proposed to know what our area needs in regards to housing. We agree that there is a need for low associated housing in the area, but for families, not for boarding style houses. This is Muswellbrook, not Sydney. The shadowing of the property is only like the picture says from 9 to 3, so we can't get the sun until like 9 o'clock. I mean, okay, that's fine. That's
So
fine.
it's just going.
Like if it was single story, we wouldn't have a problem, but not 2 stories.
Any questions from any councillors at all before? No? Okay, thank you. Mrs. Hope.
Must pass some
Oh,
pictures along.
I'll say that first, if that's all right.
Oh,
That's- Yeah, sorry, thank you. Be anything, that's all.
No,
Anything?
sorry, no.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll just wait till the council's received them.
Thank you.
Okay. You do have to.
As I voiced my concerns last month about my business and my personal life, I'd like to just mention some facts around this development application. During the council meeting last month at Denman, Mr. Gupta wanted us all to believe that he was providing this development to the Muswellbrook community. And I would like to quote his words that he said, "My main objective when purchasing this land was to do something for the community in desperate need." He then went on to say, "This land is not for me to make a profit. If I wanted to make a profit, I could have made a motel." If this is true, then why did Mr. Gupta's original submission in March of 21 propose a 2-stage development, demolitions, subdivision and boarding house? In the contents of that proposal, which partly was prepared by Mr. Casson, At conclusion 4.3, it is written, and I quote, the proposal is staged to enable stage 1 building to be constructed, including 12 units with kitchenettes, car parking and waste storage area, and a period of time given to ensure the project is viable before commencing stage 2. On the contrary, this suggests to me that he wanted to make a profit. Mr. Gaunter also said the Upper Hunter Homeless Support will be managing this house and that all rents will be falling one day. But I phoned Upper Hunter Homeless Support and spoke to senior management and was told that they knew nothing about it. Then Mr. Gaunter's architect, Nathan, told us this development was to be used by people who are working in everyday jobs. What is the truth? What clientele is to be targeted in this development? Do any of us really know? Just a little longer,
Yeah, I've read another minute.
that's fine. Whilst I understand the need for honest developers and investors to come into our LGAs, however, it appears that Mr. Gaunter has not been honest or clear about the intentions in regards to this site. And therefore, I'm begging from all my councillors to see this for what it is. I believe it is to be housing for the criminal justice system. And that is not suitable in this area. Because just up the road, you've got Ungrove Playgroup, 40 metres away. Muswell South School's only about 150 metres away. And with the completion of Wilder Street Bridge, we're going to have lots of young children going through there, past there, to the sporting complexes that the council provides. The Pacific School, Christian School, that's moving into Maitland Street as well. So, and of course where I work. These are just some of the reasons why this is not a suitable location for this particular development. And at a minimum, I'm pleading with my councillors to please put restrictions on this development along the lines that this site cannot be used for housing tenants of the criminal justice system, just to keep our kids safe, please.
So if you wish to stay there, if there's any questions from any councillors at all. Questions? Now ask Alicia Priestley to come forward. Again, Ms. Priestley, how are you? 2 minutes.
Good evening, council and our community. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous. Still, in regards to the boarding house, I'm at 5 Francis Street and my name is Alicia Priestley. With some concerns that were brought up last month, some are from myself and the neighbourhood, that we're still not clear who the building is intended for, as the developer stated homeless also had been in contact with the local homeless centre. Is this true? As nobody have had any documentation in regards to that last month. Also, the engineer had then said that it was for those that were unable to find rentals. To my understanding, this housing is for one person per room. How does this benefit those that were in a situation if they had children? And why do they require 24-hour supervision and a curfew along with medication requirements? My other concern would be the effect on our local school that's just up the road and our local family daycare business which resides next door, who have both been a huge part of our local community along with our safety and for our neighbourhood. Would the area be able to also cope with the gully and the drainage, as this is to house 23 individuals, and also post the boundary fences, as I think. What about the value of our homes? Would this then decrease the value of them? Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight.
Brings us to Mr. Camstra, if you could come to the lectern, please. And 2 minutes. I'm sure you'll be fine. Evening, Mayor, councillors, manager, and all the community. I just handed out 2 pieces of paper to you guys. One is stating pretty much that Upper Hunter Homes has got nothing to do with this organisation that's building the units or the complex. They're offering assistance in creating a process for vetting for the residents, and that's it. I sent an email to all of you guys, down all of you with my main concerns. The numbers from Upper Hunter that have been provided to Mr. Gupta, I'm not sure why he asked for them, as he started working with the DA with the numbers from the community and justice, so I don't know what's going on, but he throws some funny things as well. Try and make it look good to the community, I guess. Being here on behalf of the PNC, we're looking at 350 families. We're looking at 500-600 kids. A lot of these kids walk past our unsupervised by parents, as we want to try and get kids to walk to school and be healthy. There's going to be major concern. There's going to be a halfway house. If it is for the local Upper Hunter homeless, it would be more needed for single mothers with 1 or 2 children, which is difficult, totally not suitable for them. So pretty much useless. Also, the parking is nowhere near suitable. If we've got 22 units and a manager living on site, we only got 14 cars. It's going to be provided for the Upper Hunter, but the New England Highway is certainly not great for the overflow of cars on Irish Francis Street. Well, the kids are going to be going through to the newly developed Musk River Aquatic Centre in Olympic Park. Major concerns. Yeah, when you guys vote. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your time. Mr. Kempster, any questions for Mr. Kempster? Councillors? Okay. Mr. Gupta, I believe is online. Is that correct?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and respected councillors. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to put forth the reasons for pursuing this development. Please accept my apologies for not being present in person due to some health issues. The amended plan submitted to Mr. David Carson had addressed all the major issues raised in the previous development plans. We have addressed every single issue apart from structural and other issues which we have successfully met and updated in the amended plans. There have been concerns regarding the demographic of the people living in the boarding house. I would like to assure that my main objective is to give back to the community. As already mentioned, I have been in communication with the Upper House since the last year with the objective of having a boarding house so we can provide shelter to the homeless. We have had discussion in the past regarding working in collaboration to provide a roof over the head for the victims of domestic violence. A letter from UHH submitted with the application outlined the same. If you can look in the application, please. It is sad to see how people are categorizing the low socioeconomic community as prisoners, pedophiles, and drug abusive victims. We talk about anti-discrimination, and yet we are still having that belief that low socioeconomic people are worst. Anyone can come across. This is not between you or me to decide. They are also humans. They have equal rights to have a secure place to live. Imagine every single server and community thinks exactly the same. That does not let them be part of the community. And what would happen to them? We are just providing housing to people who have lost their home due to unforeseeable condition, whether it was growing up orphan, having physically or mental disability, domestic violence, incurring financial losses, and other reasons. We are just mentioning prisoners, low income status people. We are advocating such wrong beliefs to our future generation, our kids, as been told by the school at the same time.
2 minutes is up. Would you like a 1 minute extension?
Just because there's so many questions has been there, if I can please get 2 more minutes, because I've got so much, because there are so many people have raised.
I can allow the 1 minute and then questions from councillors if they wish.
The draft I'll go quickly. Low income status people, we are advocating such wrong belief in our future generation, our kids, that just because they belong to low income group, no one should help them and they should be outcasted and seen as a prisoners or pedophiles. The draft document, which was just an outlining to show the community that required measure will be taken for the safety and well-being others. Just like we have cameras, security access to building, police officers and others, doesn't mean that every person entering the premises or walking in the road is a criminal. We just have adequate provision for the safety. Therefore, we have taken all measures to ensure smooth working of the boarding house and for the safety and well-being for boarders and the community. I would again like to emphasize that our sole purpose to provide shelter to the homeless people. They deserve equal rights and opportunity to be part of the community in a healthy way and not discriminated and socially outcasted by the members of the society. I'd also like to address some of the other issues which were raised and are successfully met us and to see some of the report prepared by Mr. Hamis from the council. Parking people are struggling to find home to live in.
I'll just have to pull you up there if that's fine, Mr. Gupta. Because we do have Mr. Caston still to speak. Do we have any questions from councillors? Yes, Councillor Drayton.
Can I please say, because Shweta won't be coming in, so is it possible I can just speak only 4 or 5 more minutes and then any question I'm happy to answer from my side if Shweta and Mr. Nathan won't be joining in. It's okay.
That's fine. I think we have the questions to come forward, which you may be able to answer in
I just like 4 or 5 more points. If I just address, then people are aware of what we're trying to do, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding what the question has been raised. So if I'll just address those ones, so if please.
Look, I can't allow it just to do. I've given the same people the same amount of time to speak, but there are questions that I'm sure the councillors will ask with regards to potentially the points that you're going to raise, and I'll let Councillor Drayton ask the first question.
Sure.
Mr. Gupta, Councillor Drayton here. First question I have, you say, and I'll quote a few things, and of course, it's a bit hard for you to get the feeling in the room, but it's quite an emotive issue here, and seems to be somewhat confusing for councillors. We're certainly getting 2 different stories, but so I want to clarify a couple of things with you. You say you want to do something for the community, is what you said. Now, I understand you don't reside in Muswellbrook. I'm not sure whether I asked you this time or not. Have you visited Muswellbrook, and have you visited the site, and how often?
Yes, I have visited before I bought the place, and I have visited the Muswellbrook a couple of times, and I had a meeting with the council with Mr. David Carson with the council several times. So it's not the first. I've never visited Muswellbrook. I don't reside in Muswellbrook. Doesn't mean I do not want to do anything for the community or the society. If you had also had a meeting with Mr. Andrew McGarther, if you can play with the council to do with this boarding house we've been doing for the last 1.5 years.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Gupta. The reason I asked the question is because, as I say, you make us aware that there's an issue with homeless people in Muswellbrook.
Yes.
I'm aware of that issue as well, I'm sure as everyone in the room is. But what I'm aware of is a couple of things. The biggest issue, the single biggest issue with homeless in Muswellbrook by far are families and children are the biggest homeless issue.
Yes.
The boarding house you want to put there won't be able to house those people. So that's the single biggest issue, homeless issue in town. You say you care about the town, but yet you're not. This won't be able to cater for the biggest group of homeless people. How did you form your view that? I think what you told us was you spoke about the demographic of the community. How did you form your view on the demographic of the community and what you should build in there so you could do something for the community? How did you form that view?
I've been working with Upper Hunter Homeless Support. They only basically deal with the people who are part of a domestic violence, who are the part of the basically who's suffering, who are having an argument or what are they've been homeless. We're only proposing 22 rooms. We're not proposing, well, if I have the more money, I'll support more money and build more people for the people with the family people as well. This is the one for the people because there's so many single parents, who have been sexually abused, who've been domestic violence people. So those people are there. This boarding house will not solve the whole community issue, but it will solve the issues with the people who are single. And this is what we say, because we do the upper homeless support, they deal with the people, as I mentioned to you, with the homeless, who domestic violence or the thing, they're single people.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Gupta. Just one final one from me, and I'll sit down. I'm pleased you raised Upper Hunter homeless support. This is one of the confusing issues you've repeated there. You've met with those, and I think you just told us, if you could understand sometimes when the speakers that's how you form some of the view. But councillors are in receipt. You might not be aware of this, but we're in receipt of an email from the general manager of Upper Hunter homeless support, who doesn't really say the same thing you're telling us. In fact, she says it's the only meeting she's had, or the only issue she spoke to you about, is offered to assist in creating a process for vetting residents. That is the extent of any involvement with our organisation.
Yes,
So she doesn't say the same. She doesn't say that. She in fact says different to you about the meetings that. Well, she doesn't say meetings. She just says meeting that occurred. She tells a little bit different story. That's all.
The email, if you look at the email, which with the notes, it's got on the letterhead, which I had with Mr. Mary Sapura. Before Mary Sapura came along, I was speaking to different gentlemen and they're homeless because they cannot take anything in place until it is already in built. And we cannot do, and so the reason which is the thing we've been talking negotiation, because this process has taken more than 18 months with the council right now. It was, I think, about 12 months, sorry, with the council. And before that, we were going backward or forward. So we can't really, they cannot put to something right now. So I cannot go back to them that this is what we're to do. And that's the reason she said, I cannot comment right now with you to anything like before the was speaking to Mr. Lewis, who was there before Murray. And I have spoken to her.
Yeah, but she speaks on behalf of the organisation. She doesn't speak on behalf of, she is the general manager.
Yes.
So you may have, I understand that she would meet with everyone, but she isn't, the email that she sent, it wasn't an email to you, I apologise. It was an email to someone else in response, but she speaks on behalf of her organisation and she says the words that I just repeated to you, that they have no affiliation and they've only offered assistance in creating a process for vetting residents.
Exactly. The reason is that
of any involvement.
She cannot have that because they're not for the profit or not for the thing. They do not have the money, or they don't have a non-profit organization and they do not have the money to the thing. And that's the reason I've been putting all the assets of the thing. So once you are approved with the council, they will help us in the managing the thing. And that's one of the organizations we've been talking to. It's not really something, and that's what we wanted to offer to homeless people, the boarding house, to put it in place. And if you have a look at I'm not sure you've got a copy of the email, the letter which we submitted to the council with Mr. If you have a look at it in that letter, she clearly says, I understand the council have indicated a preference that the boarding house be managed by a community organization of the like. We are willing to participate in setting up a vetting process for proposed tenant to add to value to certainty regarding the occupation of the boarding house. So I'm not really.
I was simply asking a question about how you formed your view. You tell me Upper Hunter homeless, and she is the general manager. She doesn't say the same thing as what I was referring to.
But that's what the letter says. I'm not sure where with the thing. The letter which I have got, I can't see what email you got. The letter which I have got is clearly says, which I've given the copy to the council. If you look at the letter, it clearly says.
Yeah, I respect that, Mr. Gupta. We've got that letter here in front of us, and it does say that have to be managed by a community organisation or the like, and it's about the vetting process. I just want to myself ask a question in relation to the statistics and forming it. From the 1st of July 2021 to the 29th of March 2022, the Upper Hunter Community Services saw 465 clients in total, and the majority of those, by far the largest demographic, is what they say, is female between the ages of 25 to 34 years of age, who have 1 or 2 children. Were you aware of those facts when you formed this view for the best interest of the community?
Upper Hunter House, they don't have with the children or the thing. They help every single people, but out of those people, there are some single parents, the thing. So it's not really like 455 people are all with the kids. This is not something to with the kid. There are a lot of people who are single. So out of those people, we are trying to those who are singles or who are it's also people who are homeless, who are living in the street. It doesn't mean it has to be that the Upper Hunter hunter homeless only support the people who don't have, only support with the kids. They also support the people who are singles as well.
Yes, councillor Sculls.
Mr. Goodman, I have a question for you. I agree with the questions already asked, but also one of the major concerns and taking points of this particular thing is the sheer size of the building, 2-storey, number of units. Why is the business case for this particular development, if you're being a benevolent provider, why does it require such a large building and such a concentration of people?
Sure. This LAP allows in this one 13.5 meter height restriction. It allows, we only suggested 5.7 meters. If you look at the notes in that one, which Mr. Hayes says clearly, we only, if you wanted to do more, our ratio was, with this premises allow up to 0.2 to 0.1 on the zoning of this premises. We only approve 0.6% of the land. So we are not over developing this this area or 2-story or the thing. We could go 3 stories by LAP allow. We're just going with the demographic, what's allowable in that one. So I don't think so we're over developing these premises.
Thank you, councillor Sculls.
Just thank you for restating the height requirements and maintenance route, but I was aware of it.
So if you look at the notes which Mr. Hamish have put it through, all the notes, everything is there. If you look at all we meet every single condition of the council and LAP with the parking issues, overshadowing, stormwater, SAP 30-meter height restriction. The school, also the school, which has been, I would like to say the fourth person, I don't know the name of the person who's the thing. The school is 600 meters away from our premises. There's a Google map. At the same time, Mr. David's got it. He can provide it, so, which is more than half a kilometer away from our premises.
All those details are in the document. Thank you. And just another councillor that has questions. So, Mr. Councillor Mahajan.
Mr. Gupta, Councillor Mahajan, are you having a question regarding the, first of all, it's good you want to do something for the community, appreciate. Sure. As per you say that you don't want to make a profit for this boarding house, appreciate. Why you need a 2-story building? Because after listening to the community concern, they having a neighbors, they having a problem with the 2-story building, privacy, noise, too many concerns. Why you don't consider the single story? Because definitely you want to give back to community. You can help them to, instead of double story, you can give them to single story building.
The reason, I'll tell you the thing. The people who are objecting at the same scenario, they have the privacy issues. We have raised this 1 to 1.8. If you look at the notes, it says very clearly, which we worked with Mr. Hamish. We have addressed every single the thing. So we don't really like the same that people, there always be people, neighbors will not be happy. This zoning allows us to do, as I mentioned, 13 meters height limit. We're only 5.7 meters. There's across the street, there's 2-story, and we're doing with the whatever is in the local on the Maitland Street, whatever is there, we're just going with that one. Overshadowing, we meet with the overshare. We do not meet with it's not true what people are saying. If you look at the report, one of the block, which is 1350 square meter block, and the overshadowing is only 35 meters of the one which they'll get a shadow from our building, which is less than 20%. So overshadowing is no issue at all. If you look at all the conditions, we meet every single condition, every single requirement from this one. Like Mr. Hamish and the staff from the council, they're in favor of this one. They recommend that we meet every single conditions. Not even after looking at the people, there was 5 objection was raised by the neighbors. We've addressed every single objection by the neighbors, that we have addressed the height restriction, privacy issues, security issues, overshadowing issues. Every single issue has been dealt with. So I'm not really sure we're doing overdevelopment. I understand it's a human nature. We have to, because we are neighbor of the thing. This is allowed on a B2 zone, and it is available. If we don't, the council has made this place as a B2 zoning, and the B2 zoning, it is applicable. You're allowed to build, you're allowed to do this one. If the neighbor complains, I don't like this guy, he's doing this thing, he doesn't want to give the community, of course, which is not really irrelevant, because it allows the council make the route, this place is allowed to do this. So how can we object?
No, we agree, Mr. Gupta. We knew that as per the land and that they having a B2 zoning, that you can develop anything. But as a councillor, it's our responsibility. We have to listen to the community and their concern. We need to look into that before doing any decision. And the overall, like, community concern, is there any chance we go for the, like, is there any chance to you can be stud of 2-story, you can do the 1-story building? Is there any chance?
I'm open for everything the same, but in the same scenario, due to DCP and other thing, we are not over developing this property. This property is supposed to have a 13-meter high limit, 5. Our property allow for 2, whatever the ratio of the land is, we're allowed to do up to 2 times. We're only doing 0.6%, so we are not overdeveloping anything. Other people who are concerned neighbors, which is irrelevant. I agree, if it's a relevant the thing, I'm happy to take it into back and happy to do whatever need to be done. If it's legal or if it's real concern, but this is not real concern. Like other scenario, if it's a real concern, which if we're doing anything wrong, we meet every single thing. If it like, I understand the community has to be the first, and that's what I'm giving back to the community. As a councillor, you're allowed to do on the scenario.
I'm just going to wrap up the questioning now, just that we have to move on. Sorry, Mr. Gupta. I think the crust of that question was, were you willing to go down to a 1-story? But I'll now ask Mr. Casson, I believe we're up to, just find that. No, sorry, Mr. Kumar.
She's not joining. She's with the health issue. She's not joining.
Okay, no problem. So we'll move on to Mr. Casson. I've got you down, Mr. Casson, via video link, but I noticed you're here, so 2 minutes. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor and councillors and staff. I will make this brief. I'm not having to go over much of the information that's already been covered. I'd just like to reiterate some comments that you made initially and which continue on to this report, is that the applications between various government departments, Transport New South Wales Police, councils, departments, building surveyor, environmental health, community services, water and wastewater engineers, roads and drainage engineers. The application complies with the former set for affordable rental housing and is generally in compliance with the version. That covers things like car parking, which were raised. The numbers are in accordance with what the state planning policies. Complies with other relevant state planning policies, complies with Muswellbrook LEP, generally in accordance with the Muswellbrook Development Control Plan. These are all the planning guidelines that we need to take into account when we're putting an application together. We've been able to tick, and there's things that are easy to tick because you can just say it's got car parking, there's other issues which I accept, and it's the sort of issues that people here tonight are bringing up their concerns, and we've got every right to do that. They're just issues for council where there's a bit of grayness in there in terms of the assessment that's been undertaken by the council staff, taking all those things into account. The recommendation is for approval of this application. A number of comments were made regarding the draft management plan prepared and submitted with the application. A number of assumptions and concerns made regarding the potential occupants of the boarding house based on the questions that were indicated in that draft document. Comments suggested that if such questions are being asked, does it mean that those staying in the boarding house may have drug problems? Further, where there's suggestions that tenants may be prisoners on parole, those that make the locality of staying for various reasons. Just to emphasise, this is a draft. This was based on enough document in similar circumstances that was put together. Obviously, there are a whole bunch of reasons why people may be on medication, not simply because they're a drug addict, but because they need it from a health point of view. And that's the record that's reasonable for the operators of the boarding house and the Mention the applications for tenancy will be closely scrutinised And that's the booth, which the sort of the house support group, support group, they prepared a willingness to help us in that vetting process. The report of the council includes numerous conditions, including those that are aimed at ensuring that the intended use expressed in the DA documentation is realised. Obviously, the applicant will review all the conditions and conditions subject to issue of development consent. The zoning of the land and relevant legislation makes this development permissible at the location. Council supported the recommendations within the packets.
Any questions for Mr. Casson? Yes, Councillor Dunn.
Good evening. I'd just like to start by saying I think the idea of providing housing for the homeless is an honourable one. I'd just like to ask, why was this location chosen?
It's really a question that probably should be directed at to look at that. However, if you look at it, when you assess it against the relevant legislation, it's permissible in that area. It was a property that Mr. Gupta obtained. I'm not sure what the background was for the original thing. The fact that there was a motel approved there in the past may have influenced that to indicate the council thought that that sort of use was appropriate for the locality. Beyond my time.
I mean, I'm in agreement. I can't speak for other councils, but that we need to provide for people in need. But if you go back to that email, the main people that are in need in our community are single mothers with young children. And I feel that although Mr. Gupta wants to give back to the community, it's not giving back to actually the people who need it.
Accept that, but have we got any stats on how many single people are homeless and needing help to go with that? That those people have an opportunity to at least address some of the issues in the local area.
Yes.
Routes that are going to take months and few kids are very much bigger than their assistance addressing something.
The only thing I've got here is by far the largest demographic is female between the ages of 25 to 34 years who has more than 2 children.
Understand. Yeah, understand.
And I understand single people, they need accommodation too, but to me, it's the single mothers or single fathers with children who really are the ones who are in need.
Councillor Drayton.
Just brief, Mr. Casson. I think one of the issues is, and certainly was a lot of what we've spoken about tonight was what we've spoken about at the last meeting, condemning to be aware, and Mr. Gupta, and difficult for you to answer, Mr. Gupta, I don't think could have been left with under any impression that people concerned about who might be in the building. So he's had now a month to consider, because it wouldn't be hard, obviously, for you to say, for the applicant, to say that to put a condition on it, that it only will be single homeless people aboard there. But Mr. Gupta hasn't done that. Also, on top of that, I think it was Mr. Battershaw spoke last time briefly. Yeah, he raised the issue about mine workers, shift workers can't even get accommodation in Muswellbrook. You probably read the room well enough, Mr. Casson, to know that, hang on a minute, we've done nothing but speak about homeless people here tonight. And now Mr. Battershaw wants to talk about coal miners who can't get rooms in the place. So I guess there's a real concern, and the concern both from the community and certainly from councillors about just what is the place being used for. Do you know why Mr. Gupta won't, if he says he wants to do something for the community, and he talks about the issues, are you aware of why Mr. Gupta won't agree to include a provision in the condition of consent that they will only provide for homeless people, single homeless people like that, because they're only single rooms.
Mr. Cactus has included some conditions in there, proposed conditions, with the applications.
They certainly don't go as far as what I just spoke about.
No, I mean, there's limitations, but we acknowledge what the council is trying to achieve. And do my understanding is that this is his intent is not to change this somewhere down the track.
Yeah, I understand, Mr. Gupta. Yeah, referring back to what I can build rather than I'm prepared to do it. Okay, thank you.
Any other councillors have any questions for Mr. Councillor Marshall?
I'd just like to know if Mr. Goodenough actually cares about the community, because at the back of him, he has a childcare centre. At the side of him, he has 2 NDIS centres, and that will be in the near future the thoroughfare for the sports centre across Wild Street Bridge. And as far as the motel being 2-storey, yes, it is 2-storey, but it is set back 16.5 metres off curb, and it doesn't show any light back onto another building, only trees in the gully.
With respect, councillor, I don't think I can give you a comment on whether Mr. Cook cares about the community or not. That's something that all we can do is present an application for this location. It's been assessed as being appropriate. Ultimately, it's up to council to make a decision, determination of whether they agree that it's appropriate or not.
Any other councillors with questions? No. Councillor Dan Douglas?
You yourself as well mentioned when you just spoke again about Upper Hunter homeless support. I spoke personally to Mary in regards to this to sort of get an understanding of where they felt they stood, whether they felt, and again, from the last meeting a month ago to now, where we raised and asked this question, there has been no further negotiations or really much talk as to say that they're actually going to manage it or how it's going to be managed.
Thing is that they're not in a position to manage it. There's a letter from Mary's sign, and it's spoken which indicated that they were prepared to be involved in the letting process, and that they agree that there's a shortage of this type of accommodation in the local area. Again, Mary has only been in that position not for very long. I understand most of the discussions between Mr. Booker were with the previous manager at the time, I can't remember what his surname was, and I wasn't privy to those discussions, but I understood that it was quite some consideration there.
So if that's not the case, where it looks like that they're in a position, because you're now saying that they're not in a position to be able to manage this, is then yep, okay, that's your understanding. So then is the fact that you are going to try and find a community organisation that can, or you're just going to privately employ somebody to actually manage it? If that's the case, if there's not a community that can take it on.
Well, that'll be look at that. I mean, the intent will be to manage it in accordance with how it's been before. If we can find a community organisation that's in a position to do that, I'm sure there'll be discussions. But I don't know whether that's realistic.
Thanks, Mr. Casson. I think that's all the questions. Mr. Cook, I do realise, I noticed you do have your hand up. Unfortunately, with the code of conduct, we can't discuss any further on the time frame that we've had to speak. So we do have to progress with the meeting. So I apologise. We have to be with the formalisation of the code of conduct. So which brings us to, there's no name to the Cale Langdon in relation to 9.1.2. Mr. Langdon didn't want to speak unless there are any questions in relation to 9.1.2, which is the alterations and additions to the educational establishment at Muswellbrook South Public School. Does anyone have any questions? Sorry. Yes, sorry. Hang on, just if there's no.
Before you send her in the Flexia, we're not going to discuss it.
Okay, sorry, we'll have to.
No. If you just understand, you can ask the question, and no one's got any questions.
Yeah.
Why did she?
That's. Is there any questions?
No.
Okay. That's why I was waiting for a hand raise. So. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Mr. Langdon. There are no questions. It's an easy one for you.
Great, thank you for that.
Which brings us to item number 8, business arising from previous meetings. There's nothing in there, so move on to item 9, business and specific reports. 9.1 planning environment, 9.1.1 DA 2021-20, 32 boarding house 41 Maitland Street, Muswellbrook. There is a recommendation that council approves the DA 2021/32 involving the construction of a two-storey boarding house at lot 8 DP 18699 41 Maitland Street, Muswellbrook, subject to the conditions in attachment A. So, I guess.
But I will propose an alternate motion.
Okay. Do we have anyone to move that motion first at the start? Is there anyone to move that motion that's on the table? Okay. No?
Okay, all right. So my motion is council refuses DA 2021-32 involving construction of a two-storey boarding house at lot 8 DP 18699 41 Maitland Street, Muswellbrook. Pursuant to section 4.15B of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act of 1979, the proposed development would have a significant adverse environmental impact. The proposed development would be incompatible with the height, bulk, and scale of the adjoining developments and would have an adverse impact on the amenity native properties by way of noise generation, social, overlooking, and privacy-related impacts. I can provide those words to you.
Second that. Motion. Second motion.
Just a moment, sorry. Ken.
Yeah, you're right.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so that motion's been put by councillor Stiles and seconded by councillor Marshall. Do we have anyone that wishes to speak for or against the motion?
I think we've had quite enough discussion tonight.
Okay, with that to a vote, all those in favour of councillor Stiles' amended motion, which is as just spoken, can you please raise a hand? Declare that unanimous. Decision carried. Which brings us to item 9. Members of the public, Mr. Goodman, you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you don't wish to. I can make an exit now. So thank you all for your time, and that gives councillor done a little bit of time to be out before 9.1.2. Thank you for your time. Thank you. Okay, 9.1. The DA 2021-139, alterations and additions to educational establishment, Muswellbrook South Public School, 57 Maitland Street, Muswellbrook. The recommendation that development application number 2021-139 proposing alterations and additions to the education establishment at lot 36 DP 880135 57 Maitland Street be approved subject to the conditions in attachment B. Moved by councillor Charles, seconded by councillor Marshall. Anyone to speak to?
I'd like to say something.
Yes.
Muswellbrook South is a great school. It's an asset to the school, asset to this town, has been for a long time, an underestimated asset to this town. The provision of additional special ed classrooms in Muswellbrook South, I think, is exceptional, and to remove some of the demountables up the back and get permanent classrooms up the back, I think this is a great step forward for Muswellbrook South.
Okay. Second by councillor Marshall. Now I'll commit that motion to a vote. All those in favour, if you could please raise a hand. That one passed unanimous. Someone could please.
You don't.
Okay, 9.1.3, 2021-99, alterations and additions to the Muswellbrook Indoor Sports Youth Centre, Rutherford Road, Muswellbrook. The recommendation of council grants development consent to DA 2021-99 being alterations and additions to the Muswellbrook Indoor Sports Youth Centre at Rutherford Road, Muswellbrook. DP are there, subject to the recommended conditions of consent included in attachment B, and 2, waives the payment of a S712 contribution for DA 2021-99. Do I have someone to move that motion? Councillor Barry, Councillor Mahajan. Any speak to items? I'll put that motion forward. All those in favour, please raise a hand. That motion carried and unanimous. Item number 9.1.4, Muswellbrook Connect. There's recommendation that council notes the report and further actions intended to be taken by the Sustainability Unit to further develop the Muswellbrook Connect program. Moved by Councillor Drayton, seconded by Councillor Douglas.
Yep, that's fine.
All those in favour, if you can please raise a hand. That motion carried. 19.1.5, just making sure. 9.1.5, New South Wales Public Spaces Charter, recommended that council becomes a signatory to the New South Wales Public Spaces Charter. Do I have Councillor Sculls?
So moved.
Councillor Lecky? All those in favour, if you could please raise a hand. Declare that motion carried. Monthly report to council, planning environment 9.1.6. The information contained in this report be noted. Someone to move that motion. Councillor Marshall, seconded by Councillor Dunn. Discussion. Move that motion forward. All those in favour, please raise a hand. That motion unanimously carried. Item 9.2.1 under the Community Infrastructure Government Grant Recovery Grants Program. Recommend that council 1, endorses the projects provided in the report, and 2, approves the advising the Office of Local Government of the projects council has endorsed for delivery under the Local Government Recovery Grants Program. Councillor Lecky moved. Second by Councillor Drayton. Sorry, Councillor Sculls.
I'd like to commend the staff for that report as well, by the way. It's fine.
Need the microphones back with the push button. Okay, any further discussion on that? I'll put that motion forward. All those in favour, if you could please raise a hand. Declare that carried. 9.2.2, DA 2013-232, proposed community park site, Queen Street, Muswellbrook. It's a recommendation that council approves the location of the proposed community park identified as part of lot 58 DP 1276946 on Queen Street, Muswellbrook, as part of the development consent for DA 2013-232. Councillor Barry moves that motion. Councillor Douglas seconds it. Any discussion, comments? All those in favour, please raise a hand. That motion moved and carried. 9.2.3, new community infrastructure depot location options. Recommended, council endorses the Muswellbrook Waste and Recycling Facility as the proposed location for a new community infrastructure depot, and approves proceeding with planning for design and development. Councillor Mahajan, Councillor Lecky. Anyone wishing to speak for or against that? No? Put that motion forward. All those in favour, please raise a hand. That motion will be carried. There's nothing under property in place 9.3. 9.4, corporate services, adoption 2022-2026 delivery program. There's an alternate motion there I have for adoption. It's council adopts the Muswell Shire 2022-2026 delivery program with the inclusion of delivery program activity 3.4.3, which is advocate and support circular economy principles and waste management initiatives. Someone wish to second that motion off the floor? With Barry and Martin. All those in favour, if you could please raise a hand. So that motion moved and carried. 9.4.2 adoption Muswell Shire Council resourcing strategy. It's a recommendation the council adopts the revised Muswell Shire Council resourcing strategy 2022-2032 long-term financial plan, 2022-2032 strategic asset management plan, and 2022-2026 workforce management plan following 28 days public exhibition from the 27th of April to the 24th of May. Someone to move that motion. Councillor Barry, second Councillor Dunn. Speak to, for or against. Now put that motion forward. All those in favour, raise a hand, please. So that motion will be carried. 9.4.3 adoption of the 2022-2023 operational plan. Recommend the council adopts the 2022-2023 operational plan. We'll have someone to move that motion. Councillor Drayton, seconded by Councillor Marshall. Anyone to speak for or against that motion forward? All those in favour, please raise a hand. That motion will be carried. Adoption 2022-2023 fees and charges. There's a recommendation that the fees and charges for the 2022-2023 financial year be adopted. Someone to move that motion. Councillor Sculls, Councillor Lecky. All those in favour, please raise a hand. Unanimous. 9.4.5 adoption of the 2022-2023 budget estimates. There's a recommendation the council resolves to adopt the 2022-2023 budget estimates. I have someone to move that motion. Councillor Mahajan. Second, Councillor Marshall. Anyone speak to, for or against? Now put that motion forward. All those in favour, if you could please raise a hand. That's unanimous. Brings us to 9.4.6, adoption of the 2022-2023 revenue policy. Council adopts the 2022-2023 revenue policy. Do I have someone to move that motion? Councillor Marshall, Councillor Douglas, sorry. Anyone speak to, for or against that motion? I've now put that to a vote. All those in favour, please raise a hand. That unanimously carried. 9.4.7, making of rates and annual charges for 2022-2023. I've recommended that council resolves as follows. Council makes the following ordinary rates for the 2022-2023 financial year. They're tabled there in the document in front of you. And also the water charges, water service availability charges in there as well. Councillors, you all have all those items before you, and I'm sure I've read them. Oh, Councillor Drayton.
I want to put an alternate motion in regards to the rates and charges. Rates and annual charges. It's titled that the 2.5% rate peg is, as per the table provided in the business paper, only apply to these categories. They apply only to mining general, mining underground coal mining, mining metallurgical coal mining, business general, and business power generation. So in that case, the 2.5% rate increase doesn't apply to residential general and residential Muswellbrook and Denman, farming general, farming irrigable. It doesn't apply to those.
Someone second.
I'll second.
Councillor Scholes. We had. Do you wish to speak to that motion?
Just briefly, I think that it's not something just we've been dealing with within this shire. It's right across the country at the moment. Inflation, as we know, is out of control. Certainly, a lot of people are struggling, and we found out more recently, may not have quite as a percentage base, may not have quite a high percentage of people on the higher income that we thought they did. So, of course, the reason I make that comment is obviously there's a lot of people who would be struggling with a rate increase, particularly farmers. We all have farmers that just come out of a long period, and that's what farmers we have left, I might add, have come out of a long period. So I think at the moment, the 2.5% rate increase, if we are comparing locally, was 0.5% above both our neighbouring shires. Mining and certainly power generation, I understand, make up 70% of our rateable income. So I think we have to work a bit harder, obviously, as councillors to save the money. We may not now have counted on, but certainly I think it's at the moment, with the way the community is, and certainly the way inflation's out of control, if we need to work a bit harder, I think that's the right thing to do on behalf of the community.
Mr. Scholes.
Yeah, I endorse Councillor Drayton's views, understanding that related to the budget, we are on a very close budget. It's not part of the motion, but I would also like to voice a request to council officers going forward for the budget in the future that both their waste and water rates need more reflect the costs that are actually incurred in providing those services. I think they're extremely subsidised at this stage.
Yeah, just a question. Financial implications to the community.
Yes, I'll ask our CFO, who has had a chance to do a very high level overview of what that impact might be on our budget going forward.
Thank you, General Manager, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the very, very high level, so just based, if we take our 2020, 2021 rates amount carried forward, with no appreciation, or we're not taking into account any value or general differences, and we take what we've put here in our rates for the categories of mining general, mining underground coal, mining metallurgical coal, general, business general, and business power generation. The impacts to revenue would be just under, it's around $270,000 a year in foregone rates next year, and any additional compounding effects that will have over the coming long-term financial plan period.
Sorry, Councillor Drayton, just a clarification. Did you say business Thomas Mitchell Drive, industrial, as part of it? Or
It's actually already from the table.
Yeah. So that one's not in there. Okay. Does anyone wish to speak against the motion?
So can I ask where you're reading business?
That's the table. It's underneath the number of businesses that you had there that was left.
No. Sorry, I refer to all the business categories.
All the business categories.
Yes. It will apply to all. So I think it's the easiest way.
Take residential and farmland out. That's
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's right. They're the only two categories removed. Yes.
I will reduce the impact roughly to about 250,000.
All the categories below farmland residential. Yes.
Any other people speak? No. I now commit that to the vote. If all those in favour could please raise a hand. Declare that motion carried. 9 point, just want to clarify that. Yeah, sorry. 9.4.8 councillor fees. Recommendation that council notes the 2022 annual determination of the local government remuneration tribunal. 2, approves the annual fee of $12,650 for councillors for 2022-23 and approves an additional fee of $27,600 for the position of mayor for 2022-2023. Someone to move that motion. Councillor Hutton, Councillor Marshall. Anyone to speak to, for or against? I do have to get that motion. All those in favour, if you could please raise a hand. Declare that motion carried. 9.4.9, the payment of expenses and provisions of facilities to council policy. Recommend the council endorses the draft council's expenses and facilities policy for public exhibition for a period of 28 days with details of all public exhibitions received by the close of exhibition period reported to council for consideration. Someone to move that motion? Councillor Marshall. Seconded by Councillor Mahajan. You want to speak to, for or against? Now commit that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Declare that unanimous and carried. Debt write-offs. Recommend the council approves the write-off of 61,371.44 cents of sundry uncollectible debts as listed below. Councillor Costello, Councillor Mahajan seconding. All those in favour, please raise a hand.
I'd like to talk.
Sorry, you want to talk? Sorry. One time.
Now, all I'd like to discuss is that it's unfortunate we're having to write off this amount of money, but I thank the staff for tidying it up and resolving. Some of these issues have been hanging around for a long time. Some of them are too old to collect, which is unfortunate, but we've got to start somewhere, start doing it right somewhere. It looks like we are starting to do it right somewhere, and let's hope we get it right going forward.
I mean, you say a long time, a long time.
Yes.
Yeah. 20 years. Well done to the finance team and all those involved. Now I can move to a vote. All those in favour, if you could please raise a hand. That motion carries. 9.4.11, carryover projects for 2022-23. The attached list of number 1, the attached list of operating and capital carryovers be adopted. 2, the final value based on the adjusted actual 21-22 expenditure be incorporated into the 2022-23 budget prior to the September 2022 quarterly budget review. And 3, new grant funding received in late June be carried over and incorporated into the September 2022 quarterly budget review. Someone wants to move that motion. Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Dunn. Sorry, all those in, anyone wants to speak to that? Councillor Douglas? All those in favour, if you could please raise their hand. That motion moved and carried. 9.4.12, monthly financial reports, May 2022. Recommend the council notes the financial reports for the month ending 31st of May 2022. Someone to move that motion.
Awesome.
Councillor Stoles, seconded by Councillor Barry. Anyone any discussion? You want to speak to, for, against? No. With that motion, all those in favour, please raise a hand. That motion carried. 9.4.13, reports on investments held at the 31st of May 2022. Council notes the council's investments as at the 31st of May 2022. Someone to move that motion. Councillor Mahajan, seconded by Councillor Lecky. We should speak to it, or anyone for or against. Commit that motion. All those in favour, please raise a hand. That motion carried. 9.5, community economy. 9.5.1, community services. Recommended the information contained in this report be noted. Councillor Drayton moves that motion, seconded by Councillor Douglas. Any discussion, to, for, against? With that motion, all those in favour, please raise a hand. That motion carried. Correspondence. Neil. Minutes of committee meetings. Newly attached. notice of motion, we have item 12, nothing. Councillor reports. I'll make a councillor report in relation to, just last week, attended the ALGA Annual General Conference in Canberra, which was not usually attended by Muswellbrook, and I think that it's a valuable thing for us to attend moving forward, no matter who's in the chair. It was fantastic to meet other general managers, mayors, and discuss like-minded issues. It was by no means an easy task, I can tell you that right now, getting around and facilitating. I think the general manager attended as well as one or two people from UHEDC. It was enjoyable, yet very rewarding, and I encourage that, and I've asked the general manager to set forward a budget moving forward for the ALGA conference, as well as the New South Wales Local Government Conference that will be taking place in October in Colburn. So we'll be asking in the forthcoming months for any nominations to go to that. So do recommend, and I think it's something that Muswellbrook Shire Council has to keep up, and it's a great place to be. So we also met recently with regards to the bypass with Dave Lazell, Chairman of the Singleton Shire Council. Things are progressing, and Transport New South Wales, things progressing really well there, and I think we'll both be glad to see those bypasses complete. So, is there any other council reports?
I'm attending, I can speak. I'm attending the Australian Local Government Conference. Research, but it's next week. So,
Any other council reports? Anyone?
Yes, the chamber, attended the Chamber of Commerce Awards the other night, very good night, very good recipients and winners of the night.
Thank you. Anyone else? No. Written questions we have Neil. Questions for next meeting. Councillor Dunn.
I'm not prepared for this, and I'm wording, and I meant to talk about it during the debriefing. I'm a bit concerned about the fact that only 23.7% of our pools are compliant as of the 17th of June. Is there any?
Yeah, sorry.
Pools. Pools are compliant as of the 17th of June. Is there some way that within the next couple of months we can know?
It's a question for the next meeting.
Oh, okay. Right, thank you.
Let's note that down, and we'll get some response out in the interim as well. So, very valid question. Any other questions for the next meeting? Neil? Okay, I'll move a motion that we adjourn into closed council. Do I have someone to? Yes. Councillor Barry, Councillor Douglas, Marshall, sorry. Which moves us into closed council. All those in favour, sorry, raise the hand. Thank you. Which moves us into closed council. Thank you. Thank you to the media and public, and we'll be back to all idea closed council meeting.